What is up, everybody? Even the ones that are nobodies, you count too. I'm just playing around. That's just how I see the world. That's just my experience to give, because this is Pancake Marathon, essentially, in the simplest way of seeing it. This is how I, practice the principles in my affairs, essentially, and simply to say, because it's all about how I can carry a message. Yes, sometimes because it is about, not stealing, in a sense of saying, or taking somebody's ability to put the work in, manifest, essentially, and see the painstaking phase of their development, the painstaking, simply to say, that of manifesting, which is what? Put the work in. You work, 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 because you got to think, simply to say, in and of itself. Here, I know. Absolutely. You know. And so, there are those moments, right? Where it's like, I'm attempting to comprehend recovery, and oh my goodness. And yet, in the simple way of saying, and that's why I, you know, uh, give the context to the definition, essentially within recovery. Terms, jargon, the field of, because it's all about that relatability, the unity, in a sense of saying. And so, in and of itself, I know I say that almost a lot because I know not everyone really comprehends that. I want to call it a soliloquy. Yet I know, sometimes I can't pronounce words, but hey, did I use today? No. What wrong am I doing? It's in another way of saying, don't God shame me. Don't tell me I'm wrong for the way that I understand a peace of mind, a God, essentially to say. And sometimes that's just as simple as God, got off of drugs, group of drunks, go outdoors. I'm just, in a sense of saying, and this spiritual awakening, an epiphany, a moment of clarity, or just a realization, spiritual awakening, it's almost like, in how science says it, E equals MC square. Well, isn't that just a recovery? In recovery, in a sense of relatability, and uh, saying of that's how God can be worded. I don't know. I'm just wording things out loud, and that's the first time I've come to that conception of my understanding of how I have, carrying a message. Because I'm trying to. That's all I can do. I can only try. Try. Like work, work, work. Because you gotta think before you torque. I'm just saying. And in the simple way of saying too, there's points to where there's more than just recovery. And let me highlight that wording because some fresh in recovery, per se, or those that are still being affected by their spirituality, which is essentially their thought process, which essentially is your state of thinking, which essentially is still within the process of comprehending the incomprehensible demoralization, their inability to practice spiritual principles in all your affairs, and you balking and you attempting to be unearnest, essentially, balking, faking it, and that of, not being honest, earnest, So I kind of want to get into, in a simple way of saying, like, really highlight just how like step work, highlights the steps themselves, you know, because I'm not have yet come to a point of scholar or discussional behaviors of communication and expanding on that context of just a simple means of what could be a quote for myself or a metaphor for those, and eventually bring forth the the proverb, which is just a yesteryear quote, essentially. And a quote is you're actually experiencing it in and of a simple way of saying, um, and yet it's kind of like perception, and perceiving would be a metaphor, and relativity and all that is the proverb, and yet anywho, it's all about showing up to that miracle. And that's kind of what I want to highlight in a sense of saying. Because, like the other day, oh my gosh, I got so perturbed and so PO'd. Like, I also want to highlight halt. If you are, or don't get to, halt. If you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And And the most recent thing about the halt in my, experience of itself is to simply say I was tired, which then led me to be angry, in a sense of saying, and in a sense, going from that point, I was tired, so I was lonely, so I had to do everything myself, and I was angry because I was hungry, in a sense of saying. But ultimately, I was just so exhausted. I mean, I was woo e, kind of a thing. And it happens to when doesn't it happen? When you're just burning the candlestick at both ends. And oh my goodness, talk about being on fire and really truly burning your life down when you are just simply and per se being well, as it could be phrased, not having essentially, the AA zealot, which is in a sense of saying you don't have a great foundation in the sense of your mind, right? You are still within that spirituality, the thinking, the essentiality, and you attempting to be so self-seeking. Which I know there are some that say, "Oh, don't be self-centered," but to me, if this is supposed to be a spiritual program, which maybe I'm going to an extreme in that self-centeredness, spirituality centeredness is not a bad thing. That just equates to me of balance, essentially and simply to say. And yet there are points to where if you're so self-seeking, you're so ego-driven, basically, you're not focusing on the solution. You're not finding the solution. You're not going to get the solution. You're going to keep getting that problem. You're going to keep acting upon that problem, simply and essentially to say, now you're going to be going, I'm going to kiss you. I'm going to keep it simply stupid. And, there's a point where it's like, I don't want to be told, you know, a quote from those that made the atom bomb and act like that's a great thing, essentially, because they forced everybody essentially to participate in something that was not the most likable aspect in humanity's, growth period, we can kind of simply say. And then at that point, the world, or those who experienced it, did not. They did experience the absolute of how that slogan or that acronym HALT really could help them essentially in a system to get to a peace of mind, a God of their own understanding, and yet, you know, essentially and simply to say. And that's why I like to go ahead and say KISS. Keep it simply simple, right? You know, and yet if that's your type of, how you have experience and you can carry your message of a peace of mind, essentially, and it's helping you, then go ahead and say the first version of KISS, you know, per se, and even say busy. For me, nah. I know as I equate busy just to be an active part of my addiction, to use, to be getting nothing done because I'm trying to get everything done. It's like, what is going on? Why is your life unmanageable? Oh, because you're not just getting one thing done. You have 50,000 things to do, but you will always have that because you're not putting the work in. And yet, simply to say, show up for that miracle, right? Okay, so you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be non-perfect. You just have to show up, right? Let the cards lay where they are. Roll the dice, and this is what it is. Make lemons at a lemonade, or make a lemonade stand at all those lemons. I'm just saying. Yet, in a simple way of saying too, I was so angry and hurt and horrified, more or less, by my actions. Horrified in the sense that I could not just let it go, right? In a simple way of saying, the most recent one is someone, you know, had a challenge, simply to say, and they defecated right in front of the walkway, basically. It happened. It's not like, they're as aged as they are and well to do and with it as much as they can be, at that point. And so like being a handicapable, which is really kind of funny in a sense of saying, when you're in a wheelchair, aren't you super handicapable? Some would entitle that as, being handicapped, but I guess that in a simple way of saying the value in that of handicapped is you're capped off at your hands, and that's even really funny when we still go off of that. You're in a wheelchair. I'm just saying, it's like, in a sense, I guess in the relatability thing, it's like you got your hand chopped off, and or anywho, I'm just connecting the dots of, you know, medieval, I guess, at that point, or whatever is clever to simply to say. And overall, in the simplest aspect of itself, you know, there's that. Okay, so where I was going with the whole thing of somebody defecated in front of the pathway, and I just got off of work. I mean, I just got back. And talk about getting up at 7:30, basically 7:25, shooting out of bed, thinking I'm late because it's 8:25. I'm supposed to leave. I have an hour. I'm going like, oh my gosh, I'm all disheveled, basically, and I'm like, I basically, you know, gravitied, simply to say, everything on my sink into the sink. It's like, what is going on? I'm glad nothing broke, because I wasn't angry, so why would anything break? I would just, you know, essentially to say, because every time you're in fear, anger, whatever your resentments, anger, things just break down around you, and it's a sign. It's a signing. It's a a reflection of you. That's why it's going like that. And yet, in a sense, you get what you focus on, you get what you feel, you reap what you sow. Where those dialects from and the jargon within, that's simply the theme of, or whatever it may be, the archetype of, you get what you feel. That's spirituality, right? You get what you focus on. Well, isn't that science? And then you reap what you sow. Isn't that theology? The Bible, religion? It is. It's all semantics and nuances upon itself. A semantic from that point. And yet, because semantics encompass nuances, essentially and simply to say. And yet, so it's always about reading the room, more or less. I'm just saying, to really comprehend the word serenity, you must know, you must find peace in what's there. And that's why you don't wish to shut the door on it, nor regret to, because you have lost interest in selfish things to gain interest in your fellows, because you are within the, being amazed before you are halfway there because of the painstaking phase of your development, because it's all about, being of service in essentially and simply to say. And yet, so they did that, and I'm like, oh. And it wasn't like they just recently did that. I'm just saying, and not like someone wasn't, helping them, because it was not just at that one spot. It was a whole thing. It was a whole entire thing. So I guess in a simple way of, no, it had to be out there because it wasn't trailed from the front of their door. It was, anywho, I'm just connecting the dots here. So, somebody helped them, and I just came to be the one that got the hose, did something about it, because it's not like I'm the only one around. And oh man, I was perturbed, because it's like, what are you doing in life? Everyone else sees this. Oh, I seen it, and I just left. What, the fridge? Oh yeah, there's no, there's so many points. And I get not everyone has a hose nozzle and all this stuff, but there's access to a hose. There's so many points. You're just gonna sit there and talk to the one that's helping them instead of getting this out of the way and making sure no one else. Like, there's so many points. Okay, so this is where the halt, in a sense, in a simple way of saying, gets put into effect for myself. You know, I did be of service. I claimed it because what in the fridge is going on, right? Yet, so I got the hose. I have the hose, the hose nozzle. Just saying. And so I spray. There's points, and I didn't really want to do it. And I'm glad they stopped me, because I was gonna spray the whole entire thing because it needs it or whatnot. There's points. Even though I said to myself before I started, as I'm doing it, just go ahead and do this one thing, Craig. Of saying, to the simple fact of itself is, it's life and it happens. Gotta live a life on life's term, let go and let God, and hey, show up for that miracle. Right. In simply to say. And so, did I really want to do that when I got up at 7:25, shooting out of bed? No. There's points where I did that at work all day. I sprayed everything. There's points, and anywho, I'm just saying. And I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to eat. I wanted to relax, because on that same day, at some time, I go and chair a recovery meeting, right? And then later in that day, I go and chair an online Zoom recovery meeting, which I didn't ever really want to do in the first foremost of itself, because it's a Zoom. in a sense of saying, I don't feel like adding more things to my plate when I'm already doing chairing meetings. I wake up at that time to do prep day and all this other stuff. Oh, and I, like it's just, excuses to just go ahead and be whatever in a sense of saying. But it's all good. It's all good because if I don't become that cheetah that I'm running from, that's invisible at this point because they're not there, then I'm good to go. And it's okay if I do. It really is. So in a simple way of saying too, I was exhausted by the end of the day. In a simple way of saying, and just simplicity of it upon itself. Of at the like in that meeting, it I thought I messed up, but I didn't. And then I just kept honing in up on it because somebody put typed in the chat that I didn't do the Serenity prayer. And it's like the format says I don't have to. Basically it's of my choosing. And I did the we instead of the I. So there's points I think I'm not sure. And yet I was so exhausted that I made it a thing. I talked about it for to like so many, and they were like, "It's okay. What's going on?" Like, right? And I realized, I was like, "Is it this? Is it this? Oh, it's this part." And then I realized how exhausted I was. I mean, I was just absolutely, oh, there's taking too much on, like for real. And yet it's just a thing. It's just what I'm gonna make it. What it makes it matter is how I approach it. Getting up and finishing. It's not where I started. Yeah, started strong in the day. Yeah, I don't know about that, but I'm just those points. And yet, oh, and so showing up for that miracle, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to, not be perfect. There are so many points of how you reach perfection. Is in my eyes, you make progress along spiritual lines. You practice and you put that progress in, and now you're gonna reach perfection. That's pretty much the only way to show up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Oh my gosh, you said something wrong. Okay, well, you're not a saint in that sense, right? Hmm. It's just life. It is just life. It's all a thing, and or you can make it a thing. Really, you really can. And yet, and so then there's this other moment where, oh my god, like it's not like it was any different. And I was horrified by my, in a sense of saying like I can't just let it go of the whole poop thing and like whatever. Oh my gosh, like I just, everyone is as well to do as they are, and they're doing the best that they can, and yeah, sure, somebody else from the beginning of them seeing this, even if there wasn't a hose, do you have a bucket? You have a trash can. Oh my gosh, you can fill it with water and splash it down the thing. I get poop is a challenge and it smells. Oh my gosh! But you're gonna leave it in front of the walkway, and if no one knows or sees it, they're gonna step in it. And if they didn't realize that in that time frame of that action, that affair, that action happening, they're gonna track it. Like there's like so many points, but in the same of me realizing I was exhausted, and that's why I kept going on and on about it. Um, of going to the anger part in a sense of the H.a.l.t. Acronym, and saying because I got a blower, like a leaf blower, and you know I haven't got a vacuum, so I can't really suck. So I'm not really good at sucking these days. But blowing, psh, tell me I'm a number one blower because I will blow your yard, whatever. I'm just making a funny thing, to be honest. It's okay to suck and it's okay to blow. I'm just just funny things, to be honest. Because you gotta don't be so serious, right? Don't be so serial, right? I know when my character defects kicks in of discipline. Whoa, talk about me going back into being busy, and talk about me going and trying to control everything because you can't do anything right. How are you that not competent? How are you don't get the simplicity of a broom? Oh, okay. You got to keep on sweeping because there could be a lot. It's not just like a one and done kind of thing. It's not a vacuum cleaner for one, and two, you don't have to leave the dust trail after the broom, right? Don't sweep it under anything because that's kind of ridiculous. Why make somebody work harder or get affected by, in a sense, the same. And there's points where okay, you can go ahead and get a cloth or a wet hand or whatever or mop. What? I'm just saying. And then if you think you have a clean house but you have dirty cleaning tools. I don't really think you understand the concept of what clean really can be. Because do you realize that the bathroom is the cleanest house in your room in your house because you clean it all the time? The living room is probably the dirtiest. Your couch is probably absolutely horrifying. I'm just saying. Because how often do you sanitize? Take some time to really reflect and do some self care in that point. And so, going off the blower thing. Okay, why did I get angry or perturbed or just let down? And in a sense of, it's almost like don't meet your heroes because you're going to see their human aspect of their experience. You're like, what is going on? Why would you? I don't get your life story. And I am horrified. And I'm not going to see the value in what you brought anymore. And you just broke my heart. And I just can't comprehend how to live anymore. I don't know who I am because I was wrapped up in my identity with identifying that you're amazing and all these things, and you can't even live up to your unrealistic standards, right? Oh, okay. Well, it's life. Why would you let yourself down? As in a simple way of saying, legally, after 18, why are you blaming somebody else when you can still show up and do something about your life? At that, like for the parents, in a sense of saying they just did the best that they can. Maybe they never worked on themselves because they were making sure you could eat today and dealing with everything of what you wanted to do in life. So does that make them a bad parent? Does that make them the worst human being in all of existence? Or does that mean, legally after 18, it's your fault that you're choosing to blame them and to feel this way, right? Maybe at that time, when you're whatever amount of whatever of your age or how young you are, you're 5, whatever, doesn't even matter. You couldn't get what you wanted to eat or whatever. Oh, okay. Well, that's not true. You could have, but you weren't raised with being an entrepreneur. You didn't know. They only can give you what they have. I'm just saying, right? There's that, nurture versus nature at that point. And yet, so I'm blowing, the the place that I'm at, and there's points of it needed it for one, for two, I did like the stairwell, the staircase, right, the outside and then like the porch and that part, or balcony, whatever, um, and so I had to start from the top to the bottom because that just it makes sense, right? It's like the same thing. Start when you clean your shower from the top and then work your way down because that chemical or whatever you're using basically will already be working its thing and you won't have to work so hard. There's points, but I'm just, food for thought on that, right? There you go. Anywho, and the same thing with like, I don't have a shower head that, sprays, it's all attached to the wall. Okay, so fill up a cup, honestly, fill up a cup, a plastic one, okay, and then put it right parallel with the wall, right? And then kind of open it up a little bit, take it away from that wall a little bit, and move along the side of the shower. Now you don't have to keep splashing water everywhere, and it's gonna, I'm just saying. Anywho, okay. So I got so perturbed because there's a point where I'm doing this on the day that no one else is around because there's points. It's there's so many points, right? They have there's an office and there's points, right? Okay, so on my day off too. The one innocence of saying, I don't have to do it, but it's nice. It needs it. No one else is gonna come save me. Gosh, right? I gotta take responsibility for myself. I can keep on approaching it like a religion, basically in the sense that someone's gonna come save me. But what if I approach it like a spirituality aspect and I'm the one after I get my ego, out of my way, and say, oh, it's okay to be okay, and it's okay not to be okay. It's okay that the hurt people hurt people. It's okay that unhurt people unhurt people. And everyone's at a different point in their life, right? That's why it's so crucial to live life on life's terms, to let go and let God, essentially, to keep a peace of mind, right? And this is kind of where it is to meet one of your heroes in a sense of saying, of why it's challenging to do so, and then another way of saying to try. And there are sucky parts, like basically, of what standards I put onto it, basically, of carrying a message, right? There's great parts, there's horrible parts, but it's all about how you look at it. What can you make it matter within? What learning lesson do you want to be? And how can you keep on, you know, carrying a message and being an active part of your recovery? It's all good. It's all super good, right? Because if that was the worst part of your day, you probably made it. And are you going to make your past into your future because you have not just learned the simplicity of, changing your socks, which is, there's a point where you don't think about those other socks that you changed from into the new ones after you've got the new ones on, in a sense, unless or you're out, right? There's points where, oh, I didn't wash somewhere, that's cool, but we're not looking at that far. We're just keeping it simple, right? Of you have socks on and now you're good to go, right? In the sense of saying, that metaphor, right? Of saying the simplicity of the quote of why would you think the same thoughts over and over again unless you want to learn something from them, right? Simply to say, if you want to learn something from them, then go for it. But if you are done with it, then let it go. It's not the end of the world. It might be to you. One man's trash is another man's treasure. I'm just saying. But that's the power of reflection. Step 4 in a sense of saying, because you're rating yourself and rating your experience to go from, oh, I cut my arm off, which is really when you just got a paper cut, right? Something super insignificant, or even like you stub your toe, or, oh man, I forgot to, right? You can make it horrible, or you can make it matter, right? You can make it meaningless, or you can make it matter. You can keep on doing what is truly your purpose in life to make things have purpose, right? If life is automatically meaningless, because how else would free will work? I'm just saying. There are so many aspects of life, but are you willing to put the work in, or are you just going to keep on complaining because no one's giving you enough things that makes you happy, right? Happiness and sadness are fleeting. There's so many points. It's like, ugh, oh my god, positivity, negative, positivity, oh my god, optimism, gratitude, there's points. I'm not saying all those things are anything else than valuable. What I'm saying is joy is a higher level and pretty much the destination when it comes to gratitude. Gratitude's great, but there's points, right? I'm gratified for being able to walk today. Oh, I'm gratified for waking up. I'm gratified for being able to have prayer. It's like, okay, where's your joy? Are you going to be happy forever with that? No. Are you going to get sad because you don't have it? Okay, he probably is, because duality in the sense of itself and saying, and yet, the buys in life are just sometimes worth more of saying bye. Bye, bi, to. I'm just saying simply, it's okay to say bye to them. Like, bon voyage. It's great seeing you, but I gotta go. Right? Aloha. Just a paradox of saying hi and bye all at the same time. Just anywho. And so going with this blowing thing, right? Their staff at the place that I'm at. Okay, this is like their one day off. I mean, I don't know what they do, and I can't speak for them. And I, at this point, got a lot more forgiveness towards them, in a sense of myself, and yet I still won't forget. There's points to where I don't really ever want to value, other than them being a messenger, and what message are they carrying? Because I'm not going to steal somebody else's peace of mind when they feel joy, when they do something nice, basically. Absolutely, truly, truly, because kindness is, priceless, and, and that's what might bring them joy. Okay, that's cool. But, from my experience, there's points where others around them never, or always, or sometimes, and it seems to be more of a rarity, less and less to that of the actuality of what is their experience, basically, of them communicating that they are a poop head, and you will get affected by their being a poop head because somehow they're not happy, and so their misery, they want company in that, right? Because not very rare, I mean very rare, do they I have ever seen them smile. I can probably count on one hand, and I'm talking about the front and back of my hand at that point. Just saying, of seeing them smile, because they're always frowning. And I get etymology, whatever is clever for you to keep a peace of mind or condemn somebody at that point because they didn't say how you wanted them to, right? But you still get the message. Why are you focusing on the messenger and going, this is Sparta, and kicking them down a hole? Why are you holding them hostage? Oh my gosh, your house is going to get blown down because that wolf, that messenger, just wants you to open the door. I'm just saying, you probably weren't super in your foundation. Your spiritual malady is kicking in, and you're going to get affected. And yet, simply to say, so as I'm blowing, right? You know, there's the side where they're at, and then the other side that has open doors, which I comprehend now that I can close those other doors, basically, because the doors that are where they're at, they have closing doors, and it can be a wall, basically, at that point, after I close the doors. And the other door, the screen door, in a sense, I just didn't comprehend at that point until now, or after the fact, simply to say. So after the fact. See, this is where the solution comes in. If I keep focusing on the problem, I will never get to any equality of everyone walking away happy, which is the only possible way within that of having no expectations. Showing up for that miracle and keep on going. Go ahead and suit up, arm up, and keep on going. Absolutely. I really kind of like that these days because, you know, everything that you're learning in recovery is the same thing that your spirituality is going to hone in on and use against you if you don't use it yourself. These tools are available to everybody, are they not? Are you not your addiction? Is your addiction just the thing that helps you cope? Yes, unhealthily, right? You are committing suicide, but surely, slowly but surely, absolutely. And yet it's okay. Some really love and value, or they get whatever they want to do with it, in a sense, because it's their life. I can't speak for them in the simple way of saying that more step zero research is okay. It doesn't have to be part of everyone's journey, but sometimes it is. And even an accidental relapse is okay. What's an accidental relapse? You didn't go and intend to use, but you still used, and yet you didn't reset your recovery time, in essentially, simply to say. But if you realize it and then your intent is to use it, now you started absolutely all over again. For real, absolutely. So to simply say, so I'm blowing, and they decide to open the door. Now I have headphones in. I'm not looking other than what I'm trying to do. Okay, so then I move so they can go outside or whatever they're going to do. Which, okay, so then I didn't get to finish that area, for one, because I start going to the other side. And I'm blowing there, and then they decide, logically, I don't know how they come to this conclusion, other than this is a regular thing, and they are set in their ways, and they're complacent. And this is why I know they're a poop head. Absolutely. Within the simple fact that I'm blowing. Okay, there's a point where I'm blowing the direction you see me blowing in. It's not going to change. Logically. Oh, I just blowed from this side. Oh, they're there now. Let me blow all the stuff back over there. What is going on? What is really happening? Okay, so they decide to sit in the same area as they do when I'm blowing. And then I see them again. And they have their hands up like they're shrugging, because they are. And I'm like, are you serious? In my head. Now, I shake my head and move past them to finish what I'm doing. Because I got the leaf blower, because I swept outside the whole entire campus, basically, multiple times. Well, just really one time. And then, all the other times, essentially. Because the meeting area is outside. So there's points. But, so I got, you know, invested in myself, that leaf blower, because who else is going to do it sometimes, right? And I have a life, and I want to have a life, but I want to make sure it looks nice, right? Because I get the value in having nice material, nice area for those that are just getting into recovery, and they look at this piece of paper, essentially the meeting material, and it's all effed up, horrible looking and everything, and then someone's using a falling apart book. It's like, what is going on? Is this really a great place? I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and condemn this place because I'm not happy with what I see. I get it. And so that's why, there's points, right? It's about carrying a message. It's about trying. It's about doing your part, being of service, right? And so after that, now they showed their true character and how unhappy and miserable they really are, and how they are an AA zealot at that point. They look good, they know how to talk, but really, really, they're not even, making progress in their away from, in a sense of saying their spirituality. Yeah, they're not physically using, yet they're being a poop head in all their affairs, more or less, simply to say. And so I got affected. I really did get affected by it. It took I finished what I was doing, but I don't think I necessarily did a good job because I didn't get to finish where I started on the other side where they're at, right? And just in general, and for sure, there was cat's water there, right? And instead of me logically moving it, I was so pissed off, basically, that I forgot to. So I had to go back, and I didn't want to at that time because those points where I just want to relax. Slash, I get to go back later that day and chair a meeting. And then so I go back, all this kind of stuff, which is cool. It is what it is. And yet, simply to say that somebody else chaired the meeting, it is what it is. So I go back to, potentially chair a meeting, whatnot. But I go to the meeting. And, it's an in-house meeting basically, and everyone's there or whatever, and they all see, the staff being inadequate leaders if it was put into recovery aspects. But an in-house meeting is not going to always it's a place. It's not the fellowship at that moment. It's really truly. And then they see, well, the leader basically not being a trusted servant because they're throwing their cigarette butts in the road, or they're doing something that's just not logical in the sense of what they're trying to be in the showcasing of that position, basically, more or less. And so they get affected, and then they get resentful, and then they get, all these things, and they get obsessed, worry, essentially, like, what's going on, and then they get all in a simple way of saying, so, points. And so I go ahead and voice this in the meeting, basically, using anonymity, absolutely, right? Those points. If you were there, you know exactly what's going on, really, truly, and absolute. Because it's always about the message, not the messenger, right? And the reason why I say that in the meeting and all this stuff, to give everyone the ability to see that they're not alone. I get affected, right? And how am I going about making progress, right? And in that meeting, because you get what you give, basically. Somebody else got angry. Oh, it started a whole thing, like a whole thing. They got up out of the meeting. They got their meeting paper. I don't call it a slip because I'm not signing off on your psychological horrors of a slip. I don't care if it's a slip of paper. I don't care. Why psychologically gear somebody up to being okay with a slip? And yet I see the value in that as well, because same thing as saying, you have hope and you had faith when you're using the drug, right? I'm just saying, so here's a slip and being okay to redefine it, basically. And yet, similar to say, but I still call it a meeting paper because that's what it is. I'm just saying. Yet, um, and so, there's points to it all, similar to say. Oh, but I don't feel like ever having to redefine somebody saying, "What's that? What are you talking about?" Because you're the only one that calls it that, right? But anyway, even though my intuition just said don't go into depth in that, more or less, or they actually just said don't talk about it at all. Yet, anywho, um, to simply say, of so that all happened. It's not. Then they did all that, and then they were basically talking really loud, being belligerent within their language of, calling everybody a P and a B and all these kind of things, absolutely. After the fact, they did apologize and all this kind of stuff, but they, there's points. They have anger things going on. Who doesn't? And so, they're making progress and all this kind of stuff. And yet, it all happened because of that. Those points, And so that's how I know when you realize that halt is where you're at, basically, or what can help you keep your peace of mind. Being hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, don't get to, or if you think that you are, there's points. And at the same time, show for that miracle, right? And we all know that we're not alone once we keep realizing we aren't. You're not. You might not have the same experience, right? So you can't necessarily relate, but you can be empathetic and compassionate in the simple way of saying, and yet, in and of itself, that's what I have today. Because I get to go eat and all this kind of stuff. I was making food. It's probably super ready to eat now at this point. And yet, I just want to make this, this episode of this podcast because I know that I have something to give. And I'm glad that I made it at this time because I would have been super angry and been like, oh, it's one of those things again because I did it before in a sense of being sad and angry and whatnot. Yet, it's all part of life. It really is. How are you going to deal with it? Going to get up after you failed or you feel that you failed and see that it's not about what you started, it's about what you finish and how you finish? You know, it's about not reacting, it's about acting. It's about seeing that you have value, that your shoes do fit just right, that you do deserve to take up space. You are allowed to find value in your feelings. You're not allowed to unjustifiably or justifiably in a sense of how you think you can condemn somebody or how it's okay to appropriately act within how you're reacting essentially, and being so self seeking. Your ego's kicking in. Your spirituality is absolutely showing its face, and then you're going to slap everybody down because you don't know how to just say, I'm not okay. I'm at my 30% out of my 100, and that's what I have to give, and it's okay. I am the weakest link right now, and I need your help to, help you to become the strongest, right? We don't do this by ourselves. We do it together. And yet, having a moment of you reflect, self-care can super turn into isolation, and this is why I do this as well. Simply to say, and yet, have a great one. Thanks for making this matter, and thank you for showing up to your life today for that miracle that you really are.